Today we are talking about Switch controllers. Why do we do that? Because I feel like it. We're still gonna talk about Smite later, don't worry, that video's coming, but I wanted to talk about something different first. So the reason for this is obviously Smash is coming out soon, and I've been looking for a second controller so Teets and I can play together. And I've been having a look around and I was kind of considering between getting a secondary normal Switch controller, the Switch Pro or whatever it's called, or getting a traditional Smash controller because we are playing Smash. And, you know, it kind of makes sense that you would look towards the Smash controllers, especially since they're a little bit cheaper. And I figured, you know, I might just go with the default Smash GameCube controller version that Nintendo released, but I also wanted to kind of look into it a little more. I'm just, you know, the type of person that would not just go for the first best option, but rather see what else is on the market, what's worth it. And at this point, I probably have to point out that this video is not sponsored at all. I'm not getting a single cent, and I've never been in touch with the company that I will talk about. I just personally found this pretty cool, and I wanted to let you guys know. So there have been a few, I guess in a way, knockoffs from the GameCube controller. They were not only the copy that Nintendo made basically, but also another company that is called Hori. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. This is what one of their controllers looks like anyways. Kind of see back here as well, whatever. This one is the Mario version. There is also a Luigi version, a Peach version, a Pikachu version, which is not transparent, these are like half transparent. And there's also a Zelda version, which is the black one, which is probably the one I would have gotten if it was available in Germany. So why am I talking about this controller when the Nintendo version exists? And the Nintendo version I think is like 30 bucks, whereas in the Switch Pro controller is around 60 bucks. So first of all, a quick glance at what the other controllers offer. The fact is that, you know, the Switch controller does everything you want it to do. The Switch Pro controller, it's just designed for Switch games, and it has a few things that you won't find on the other controllers necessarily, because it's just designed for with emotions controls and whatnot. So it works for every single game, but it's maybe not exactly ideal for Smash Bros. Because the motion layout on one hand is a little bit different. The analog sticks are a little bit different. And the button layout, especially for those who've played past Smash games, isn't exactly what they're used to. You can definitely play Smash with it, no doubt about it, but I at the same time felt that 60 bucks for a secondary controller was a pretty hefty price tag. Then you have the Smash controller from Nintendo that's specifically made for the Switch, which is nice, don't get me wrong, it's just basically a remake of the classic. But it's also only for Smash. It does not have certain functionalities you want on the controller if you want to play any other games at all. I'm not talking about motion controls, I'm just saying that certain buttons are literally not on that controller at all, so you can't really use it for everything. And this, in my opinion, this Hori controller is kind of like the bridge between both. It has some downsides as well that I'll get into, but first of all, it's maybe nice to point out that this thing is literally licensed. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's licensed by Nintendo itself. So this is like, in a way, I guess, an official product as well, which gave me a little bit more faith in it rather than it just being like a cheap knockoff. So this is what the actual thing looks like in my hands. You can notice some subtle differences to the normal Switch controller, the normal GameCube controller, which are, on one hand, the controls here, the arrow buttons just being slightly bigger, which in my opinion is a good thing because it makes it a little bit more usable for other games that actually require these controls. But that's just a very minor thing. The bigger thing for some people will be that the shoulder switches, the back ones, are not triggers. So normally these are like kind of curved in, and you can like kind of rest your finger, and you have to put a lot of manual pressure on them to actually activate them. Like some people used to modify them and whatnot. With this one, you don't have to do that, but at the same time, it's a different feeling because they're flat. Normally, you can rest your fingers on them very nicely. On these ones, it doesn't feel quite as nice, but it's a minor thing, especially if you're not that used to the old controller yet. And outside of that, it very much looks like a standard controller with the extra addition of an extra key here, which makes it usable for a lot more games already. And that's not all. It actually has some other reasons to make it more, some other functions to make it more usable for other games. Hear that? You can push down both control sticks. And that, I think, is already nice. So that allows for a lot more games that require you to do that. For example, I was testing this on Zelda very briefly, and it allows you to crouch. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to crouch, which kind of sucks. And then you also have all the Switch functionality buttons. Basically, you have your plus minus, home screen, screenshot, and in the middle you also have a turbo button. The turbo button, what I learned from another video, which I will link down below, which had a lot of interesting information that I will partially repeat here as well, has the option to make you use a button in different ways. So if I hold the turbo button and then I press A, and now it will quickly activate A over and over and over if I were to hold it down. I tested it in the menu, so it basically takes away the function that you would have in holding it down, instead it spams the button. If you do this one more time right after, then it will permanently spam the button without you having to do anything. This is basically what, you know, when you use it in a game if you don't want to go AFK or something. But honestly, I don't really think you're going to be using either, and you'll probably be abusing it one way or another, so I don't care about turbo. It's not for me. But it's there, and it's also the downside that if you were using this in a competitive environment, you might run into problems, because if you're a competitive player, you have tournaments, or most tournaments will not allow controllers with turbo buttons. So you might get away with breaking it, somehow taking it out, which is possible, and that way preventing that issue for you, but it could still be denied to you. It's also a little bit different when it comes to the movement controls. This is also something that comes from another video that I'm gonna link down below, where somebody showed that basically if you push the arrow keys in a direction, they will kind of lock on into that direction. I checked if that's the case with my controller too, and it is. So it seems to be the standard for all of these models. So if I push up, it takes a little bit to actually go from that straight route up, and you know, if I jiggle a little bit to the left or right, it will not be recognized. Instead, the controller will keep this straight line, which makes it a little bit harder, especially when you do diagonal movements, to make sure that you go into diagonal movement right away instead of going into a straight movement first. It can be an upside, can be a downside, depending on how you prefer your movements. If you'd rather have those straight movements that ensure that you definitely go in the direction you want to point in, or if you want to have precise movements with everything you do. So another little bit of a downside. I also have to point out that in my case of the controller, this one button, if you can hear it from very close up, is slightly clicky. The other one is not. I think this is just my version though. I really don't mind, because it's such a minor thing. It doesn't change anything about the feeling when I press it either, so whatever. But I think it's just to my controller, but I want to point it out as well. So this has some flaws. It also doesn't come with motion controls, and doesn't come with rumble, so if you want that, then you will have to go for another controller. But for Smash and for many other games, not all other games, this is very good. And if you have this plus the normal remote that basically comes with the Switch already, I'm actually forgetting what it's called right now. If you have those two, which have the motion controls, then you're basically set for all games, no matter if it's more of a fighting or shooting game where you want some sort of controller, or you go with the default controller for everything else that is more like Pokemon Go. I think this is something worth considering, at least worth keeping in mind, especially because they have these different styles as well, which in my opinion are kind of cool. And at the end of the day, it's also cheaper than either the Pro Controller or the Smash Bros. Redo, at least depending on where you are in most situations. Like in Germany, the Smash Brothers remake controller from the GameCube goes for 30 euros, and this one goes for 25. In the US, I think it's $30 for this one, or even $25. And you will be able to, again, use this on more games. And last but not least, another small thing I forgot is you have these textured grips. Maybe you can see them really close up. It's not a smooth surface on the back, so that makes the grip a little bit nicer. It's not rubberized or anything, it's just textured and a little bit rougher. As well as the fact that the buttons here are switched. You have the R and here's the ZR, but you can switch them back. If you hold the buttons while plugging the controller, they will switch around, so that's completely up to you how you want to set it up, but I know that a few people have had some issues with that. And as such, I would highly recommend this controller. I've played it a little bit so far, and I will definitely play it with Smash. And as a secondary controller especially, I think this is a great option, as opposed to many other knockoffs that, you know, probably don't come with decent quality. There is another company that also makes a similar controller to this one, actually like a full-on GameCube Smash controller with these extra buttons too. and I think doesn't have a turbo and has a little bit of a different look. I'm not quite sure what the company is called, Power A or something, but that one is not available in Germany at least. So this was the one that I could opt for, and I guess that's for most of Europe at least, whereas an A has a bit more flexibility in which controllers they can actually get. But yeah, I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to give you guys this recommendation before Smash comes out, or for some of you it's probably already out right now. If you're considering to get a secondary controller, I can highly recommend the Hori Battle Pad, I think it's called, for the Switch specifically. And if you're lucky, you can get the Zelda version instead of the Mario version, because the Zelda version is black and looks cooler and all that. Or, I don't know, maybe you enjoy the Peach version. Who am I to judge? And with that, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope to see you for the next one later. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click sub and the bell, it really helps me out. And I will probably be making at least some Smash content in the near future as well, because I'm really looking forward to it. Yixloth, out.